Caesar Augustus, Part 6 of the Lives of the 12 Caesars, by Gaius Suetonius Tranquillus. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Leni. The Lives of the 12 Caesars, by Gaius Suetonius Tranquillus, translated by Alexander Thompson and edited by T. Forster. Augustus Caesar, Part 6, paragraphs 90 to 101. We have the following account of him respecting his belief in omens and such like. He had so great a dread of thunder and lightning that he always carried about him a seal skin by way of preservation. And upon any apprehension of a violent storm, he would retire to some place of concealment in a vault under ground, having formerly been terrified by a flash of lightning while travelling in the night, as we have already mentioned. He neither slighted his own dreams nor those of other people relating to himself. At the battle of Philippi, although he had resolved not to stir out of his tent on account of his being indisposed, yet, being warned by a dream of one of his friends, he changed his mind. And well it was that he did so, for in the enemy's attack his couch was pierced and cut to pieces on the supposition of his being in it. He had many frivolous and frightful dreams during the spring, but in the other parts of the year they were less frequent and more significative. Upon his frequently visiting a temple near the Capitol, which he had dedicated to Jupiter Tonans, he dreamt that Jupiter Capitolinus complained that his worshippers were taken from him, and that upon this he replied he had only given him the Thunderer for his porter. He therefore immediately suspended little bells round the summit of the temple, because such commonly hung at the gates of great houses. In consequence of a dream, too, he always, on a certain day of the year, begged alms of the people, reaching out his hand to receive the dole which they offered him. Some signs and omens he regarded as infallible. If in the morning his shoe was put on wrong, the left instead of the right, that boded some disaster. If, when he commenced a long journey, by sea or land, there happened to fall a mizzling rain, he held it to be a good sign of a speedy and happy return. He was much affected likewise with anything out of the common course of nature. A palm tree, which chanced to grow up between some stones in the court of his house, he transplanted into a court where the images of the household gods were placed, and took all possible care to make it thrive in the island of Caprae. Some decayed branches of an old ilex, which hung drooping to the ground, recovered themselves upon his arrival, at which he was so delighted that he made an exchange with the Republic of Naples of the island of Enaria, Ischia, for that of Caprae. He likewise observed certain days, as never to go from home the day after the Nundie, nor to begin any serious business upon the Nones, avoiding nothing else in it, as he writes to Tiberius, than its unlucky name. With regard to the religious ceremonies of foreign nations, he was a strict observer of those which had been established by ancient custom, but others he held in no esteem. For, having been initiated at Athens, and coming afterwards to hear a cause at Rome, relative to the privileges of the priests of the Attic Ceres, when some of the mysteries of their sacred rites were to be introduced in the pleadings, he dismissed those who sat upon the bench as judges with him, as well as the bystanders, and bared the argument upon those points himself. But on the other hand, he not only declined, in his progress through Egypt, to go out of his way to pay a visit to Epis, but he likewise commended his grandson Caius for not paying his devotions at Jerusalem in his passage through Judea. Since we are upon this subject, it may not be improper to give an account of the omens before and at his birth, as well as afterwards, which gave hopes of his future greatness, and the good fortune that constantly attended him. A part of the wall of Velatrae having in former times been struck with thunder, the response of the soothsayers was that a native of that town would some time or other arrive at supreme power. Relying on which prediction, the Velatrians both then and several times afterwards made war upon the Roman people, to their own ruin. At last it appeared by the event that the omen had portended the elevation of Augustus. Julius Marathus informs us that a few months before his birth there happened at Rome a prodigy, by which was signified that nature was in travail with a king for the Roman people, and that the Senate, in alarm, came to the resolution that no child born that year should be brought up, but that those amongst them whose wives were pregnant, to secure to themselves a chance of that dignity, took care that the decree of the Senate should not be registered in the treasury. I find in the theological books of Asclepiades the Mendesian that Atia, upon attending at midnight a religious solemnity in honor of Apollo, when the rest of the matrons retired home, fell asleep on her couch in the temple, and that a serpent immediately crept to her and soon after withdrew. She, awaking upon it, purified herself, as usual, after the embraces of her husband, and instantly there appeared upon her body a mark in the form of a serpent, which she never after could efface, and which obliged her, during the subsequent part of her life, to decline the use of the public baths. Augustus, it was added, was born in the 10th month after, and for that reason was thought to be the son of Apollo. The same Atia, before her delivery, dreamed that her bowels stretched to the stars, and expanded through the whole circuit of heaven and earth. His father, Octavius, likewise, dreamt that a sunbeam issued from his wife's womb. Upon the day he was born, the Senate being engaged in a debate on Catiline's conspiracy, and Octavius, in consequence of his wife's being in childbirth, coming late into the house, it is a well-known fact that Publius Nigidius, upon hearing the occasion of his coming so late, and the hour of his wife's delivery, declared that the world had got a master. Afterwards, when Octavius, upon marching with his army through the deserts of Thrace, consulted the oracle in the grove of Father Bacchus, with barbarous rites, concerning his son, he received from the priests an answer to the same purpose, because, when they poured wine upon the altar, there burst out so prodigious a flame that it ascended above the roof of the temple and reached up to the heavens; a circumstance which had never happened to any one but Alexander the Great, upon his sacrificing at the same altars. And next night he dreamt that he saw his son under a more than human appearance, with thunder and a sceptre, and the other insignia of Jupiter, Optimus, Maximus, having on his head a radiant crown, mounted upon a chariot decked with laurel, and drawn by 6 pair of milk-white horses. Whilst he was yet an infant, as Caius Drusus relates, being laid in his cradle by his nurse and in a low place, the next day he was not to be found, and after he had been sought for a long time, he was at last discovered upon a lofty tower, lying with his face towards the rising sun. When he first began to speak, he ordered the frogs that happened to make a troublesome noise upon an estate belonging to the family near the town to be silent, and there goes a report that frogs never croaked there since that time. As he was dining in a grove at the 4th milestone on the Campanian road, an eagle suddenly snatched a piece of bread out of his hand, and, soaring to a prodigious height after hovering, came down most unexpectedly and returned it to him. Quintus Catulus had a dream, for 2 nights successively after his dedication of the Capitol. The first night he dreamt that Jupiter, out of several boys of the order of the nobility who were playing about his altar, selected one, into whose bosom he put the public seal of the Commonwealth, which he held in his hand. But in his vision the next night he saw in the bosom of Jupiter Capitolinus the same boy, whom he ordered to be removed, but it was forbidden by the god, who declared that it must be brought up to become the guardian of the state. The next day, meeting Augustus, with whom till that hour he had not the least acquaintance, and looking at him with admiration, he said he was extremely like the boy he had seen in his dream. Some give a different account of Catulus' first dream, namely, that Jupiter, upon several noble lads requesting of him that they might have a guardian, had pointed to one amongst them to whom they were to prefer their requests, and putting his fingers to the boy's mouth to kiss, he afterwards applied them to his own. Marcus Cicero, as he was attending Caius Caesar to the Capitol, happened to be telling some of his friends a dream which he had the preceding night, in which he saw a comely youth, let down from heaven by a golden chain, who stood at the door of the capital,